Chapter 1. Midnight Visitors. The stars twinkled in the vast expanse of space, surrounding the Odyssey like a blanket of jewels. The Deep Space Research Vessel, renowned for its mission to explore uncharted territories, was currently stationed in the middle of nowhere. The crew, including myself, was restless after weeks of scouring the newly discovered planet Xeris, 9 for anything resembling intelligent life. My mind, tired from constant data analysis and routine exploration missions, longed for peace. After yet another long day, I finally dragged myself to my small quarters for some well-earned rest. The cabin was a stark contrast to the grandeur of space. A minimalistic room equipped with the basics: a bed, a workstation, and a small viewport looking out into the endless abyss. The low hum of the ship's systems filled the room, normally a sound that helped me unwind. But not tonight. Something about the quietness of this sector of the galaxy felt unsettling, as if we were being watched. I shook the thought away as I lay down on the bed, still fully dressed. Despite my exhaustion, sleep was elusive. My mind wandered, unable to switch off, as I reflected on our findings. Xeris, 9 had been a disappointment so far. Barren landscapes, minimal vegetation, no signs of sentient beings. It felt like a waste of resources, and the crew had begun to voice their frustrations. As I was on the verge of finally dozing off, a soft sound broke through the hum of the ship, a faint rustling. I blinked, sitting up slightly, groggy and disoriented. The sound came again, this time unmistakable. The door to my quarters was sliding open. I glanced toward the door, half expecting to see one of my crewmates coming to bother me with some late-night nonsense. But as the door hissed open, revealing the figures standing there, all thoughts of tired irritation drained from my mind. 2 figures. Tall, graceful, and definitely not human. The figures, identical in every way, stood motionless for a moment. Their skin shimmered in the dim light of the hallway, a pale silver that seemed to reflect the light in an almost liquid way. Their large, glowing blue eyes were fixed on me, wide with surprise, or was it curiosity? I couldn't tell. Their faces were sharp and angular, their features otherworldly, and they wore long, flowing robes that seemed to ripple with an unseen wind. For a few seconds, I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. This couldn't be happening. My brain struggled to make sense of the situation. Were these creatures part of the crew? Had I missed some critical briefing about aliens aboard the ship? No, that was impossible. We hadn't encountered any sentient beings, not yet. So how? I took a sharp breath and scrambled to sit up fully. Who are you? I managed to ask, my voice hoarse with confusion and fear. The twin figures exchanged a glance, as if they were silently communicating. The one on the left stepped forward first, moving with a grace that seemed almost too fluid, like they were gliding rather than walking. Her lips parted, and a melodic, almost musical voice came from her mouth, though the words didn't match her lips' movements. "Do not be afraid," she said, her voice a soft hum that seemed to vibrate through the air. "We did not mean to intrude. We are lost." I blinked, still trying to catch up with what was happening. Lost? How could they be lost on my ship, of all places? The second twin, who had stayed behind but now stepped forward to join the first, spoke next. Her voice was slightly deeper, though just as musical. "We did not know this was your chamber. We seek sanctuary." "Sanctuary?" I repeated dumbly, still staring at them. "From what?" There was a pause, and the twins exchanged another glance. The first one spoke again. "From those who pursue us. We are in danger." I swallowed hard, trying to process what they were saying. These aliens, wherever they were from, had somehow found their way onto the Odyssey and were now asking me for sanctuary? It made no sense. But before I could ask more, the second twin suddenly turned her head, as if listening for something. "Time is short," she said urgently. "We must hide. They are close." Before I could even react, they both moved, stepping fully into my room and allowing the door to hiss closed behind them. My mind was still spinning, and I didn't know what to do. Should I call security? Inform the captain? But something in their expressions, a mixture of fear and desperation, kept me from moving. Instead, I found myself asking, "Who's after you?" They didn't answer immediately. Instead, the first twin reached out, her hand hovering just above mine. not quite touching but close enough that I could feel a strange warmth emanating from her skin. "Please," she whispered, "trust us. We do not wish to cause harm. We only seek to escape." I stared at her hand, then at her face. Despite everything in me screaming that this was wrong, that I needed to sound the alarm, something about them, about their presence, made me hesitate. I had no idea what kind of trouble they were in, or what consequences would come from helping them. But in that moment, I made a choice. "Okay," I said softly, "I'll help you. But you need to tell me everything." The twins shared another look, their glowing eyes softening. "Thank you," they said in unison, their voices blending together like a hauntingly beautiful harmony. "We will tell you everything." But before they could say another word, a loud thud echoed from the corridor outside my door, followed by a strange, guttural voice calling out in a language I didn't recognize. The twins stiffened, their expressions darkening with fear. "They have found us," one of them whispered, and then the lights flickered. Chapter 2. Into the dark. The lights flickered once more, casting long, eerie shadows across my room. The twins stood frozen, their glowing eyes wide with alarm. The sound from the corridor, a deep, guttural voice followed by what I could only describe as mechanical footsteps, seemed to get louder with each second. My mind raced. I hadn't even had time to process the fact that I was in my room with two alien beings, and now I was being thrust into what sounded like a life-or-death situation. Whatever or whoever was out there was clearly not friendly. "We must move quickly," the first twin whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the ship. She stepped closer, her silver skin catching the dim light, making her appear almost ethereal. "If they find us, it will be too late." The second twin was already looking around the small room as if searching for an escape route. My heart pounded as I realized I had no idea how to handle this. We were deep in space, on a ship designed for research, not combat. What could I do? "Who are they?" I asked, my voice trembling with a mix of fear and confusion. "What are they after?" The twins exchanged a quick glance, as if weighing how much to tell me. The second one finally spoke, her voice sharper and more urgent than before. "They are hunters, mercenaries from a far system. They track and capture beings like us, those who are different." "Different how?" I asked, though part of me wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. The first twin hesitated, her glowing eyes locking with mine. "We are exiles," she said softly, "from our homeworld. We possess abilities that others fear. They seek to use us, to control us. We cannot allow that." "Abilities?" My heart skipped a beat. "What kind of abilities?" I whispered. Before they could answer, there was another loud thud from the hallway, this one closer. The door to my quarters rattled slightly, as if something or someone was trying to get in. The twins tensed, their expressions growing more desperate by the second. "We don't have time," the second twin said, her voice rising in panic. "We need to get out of here now." I nodded, adrenaline surging through my veins. My room had no other exits aside from the main door, but I remembered that there were service ducts that ran throughout the ship for maintenance purposes. They were small, but they might be our only option. "This way," I said, rushing to the corner of the room where a small panel covered the access to the ducts. I quickly removed the panel, revealing the narrow passage beyond. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. The twins didn't hesitate. They moved with a fluid grace, their bodies slipping into the duct with ease. I followed them, barely fitting through the opening. The metal of the duct was cold against my skin, and the enclosed space made my breathing shallow. I had never liked tight spaces, but this wasn't the time for complaints. We crawled through the ducts in silence, the only sound being the faint hum of the ship systems and the distant clanging of footsteps behind us. The twins moved quickly and efficiently, as if they had done this before. I, on the other hand, struggled to keep up, my heart pounding in my ears. After what felt like an eternity, we reached a junction where the duct split off into two directions. The twins paused, glancing down both paths. "Which way?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. The first twin tilted her head slightly, as if listening for something. After a moment, she pointed to the left. "This way," she said, her voice soft but certain. We continued down the left path, the duct sloping downward as we went. I had no idea where we were going, but I trusted that the twins knew what they were doing. They had been on the run for who knew how long, and they seemed to have a better grasp of the situation than I did. After a few more minutes of crawling, we came to another panel, this one leading to a lower level of the ship. The second twin pushed the panel open and slipped out, followed by her sister. I was the last to climb out, landing on the cold metal floor of what looked like a storage bay. The room was dimly lit, with rows of crates and equipment stacked high against the walls. It was a far cry from the safety of my quarters, but at least we had some cover here. The twins moved quickly, positioning themselves behind one of the larger crates. I followed suit, crouching down beside them as I tried to catch my breath. "Now what?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "We wait," the first twin said, her eyes scanning the room for any signs of danger. "Wait for what?" I asked, feeling a surge of frustration. "Those things, those hunters, they're going to find us eventually. We can't just hide here forever." The second twin shook her head. "They will not find us here. This area is shielded from their scanners. We are safe for now." I frowned, trying to make sense of what she was saying. "Shielded? How do you know that?" The twins exchanged another glance, and this time it was the first one who spoke. "We know this ship better than you think," she said quietly. "We have been aboard the Odyssey for longer than you realize." My eyes widened in shock. "What? How is that possible? I would have noticed, Dash." "We are not like your kind," the second twin interrupted. "We can move through the shadows, unseen. We have been hiding aboard this ship since it left your homeworld." I stared at them, my mind racing. They had been here the whole time? Hiding in plain sight? The idea seemed impossible, but the more I looked at them, the more I realized just how little I understood about these beings. Before I could ask any more questions, a low rumble echoed through the storage bay. The twins tensed, their eyes narrowing as they listened to the sound. "They're here," the first twin whispered. I felt a chill run down my spine. "What do we do?" The second twin turned to me, her expression grim. "We fight." Chapter 3, Powers Unleashed. The moment she said, "We fight," I felt a shiver course through my body. Fight? What could I possibly do against these hunters? My experience with combat was limited to simulations and a few basic self-defense classes we all had to take as part of the crew. There was no way I could take on whatever was coming for us. But the twins didn't seem afraid. Their silver eyes glowed faintly, a strange, otherworldly energy radiating from them that made my skin tingle. I crouched lower behind the crate, my breath coming in shallow gasps as the low rumbling continued, growing louder by the second. The footsteps were drawing closer. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to get out of here, but there was no way out now. The storage bay was sealed except for the air ducts we had just crawled through, and going back was no longer an option. We were trapped. I looked at the twins, both of them standing now, back straight, their eyes focused on the far door as if waiting for something. Or someone. "Are you sure we can take them on?" I whispered, my voice shaking. The first twin turned her head slightly, meeting my gaze. "We must," she said, her voice calm but firm. "We have no choice. If they capture us, we will be taken to a place from which we will never return." I didn't need her to explain further. The fear in her eyes told me everything I needed to know. These hunters weren't just after them for some petty reason. This was life or death for them. And for some reason, I had become a part of it. The second twin stepped forward, her movements smooth and deliberate, like a predator preparing to pounce. "When the door opens," she said quietly, "stay behind us. Do not interfere." I swallowed hard and nodded, pressing myself tighter against the crate. My mind was racing with questions, but there was no time to ask them. The door at the far end of the storage bay suddenly slid open with a low hiss, and my heart leaped into my throat. The hunters had arrived. They were nothing like I had imagined. Tall, imposing figures dressed in dark, armored suits that gleamed under the dim lighting. Their faces were covered by smooth, featureless helmets, and they carried weapons that hummed with a deadly energy. There were 3 of them, each one more intimidating than the last, and they moved with a terrifying precision, like machines. One of the hunters stepped forward, his voice a deep, distorted growl that sent a chill down my spine. "Surrender the exiles," he commanded, "or face elimination." I held my breath, my entire body frozen with fear. The twins, however, remained completely still, their eyes locked on the hunters. There was no fear in their expressions, now only cold determination. "You will not take us," the first twin said, her voice clear and steady. The hunter took another step forward, raising his weapon. "You have no choice." For a moment, the room was silent. Then, without warning, the second twin raised her hand, and the air around her seemed to shimmer. A wave of energy rippled through the room, hitting the hunters with an invisible force. The one in front staggered backward, momentarily stunned, but quickly regained his balance. "Now!" the first twin shouted, her voice commanding and sharp. In an instant, both twins moved. Their silver robes billowed around them as they raised their hands in unison, unleashing a surge of energy that crackled through the air like lightning. The storage bay was filled with a blinding light as their powers collided with the hunter's defenses. I watched in stunned silence as the twins fought, their movements impossibly fast, their powers rippling through the room like waves of light and sound. The hunters, though skilled and well-armed, were clearly struggling to keep up with the twins' speed and agility. Their weapons fired beams of energy that crackled against the walls, but the twins seemed to anticipate every move, dodging with a grace that defied logic. It was unlike anything I had ever seen. The twins weren't just strong, they were powerful beyond comprehension. The first hunter, the one who had spoken, tried to fire another shot, but the second twin was faster. She flicked her wrist, and the weapon was wrenched from his hand by an invisible force. The hunter stumbled backward, his armor sparking as he tried to recover. "Fall back," one of the other hunters barked, but it was too late. The first twin raised her hand again, and a wave of energy slammed into the group, sending them crashing into the far wall. The impact was so powerful that the walls trembled, and for a moment, I feared the entire ship might buckle under the force. The hunters were down, their armored bodies crumpled against the metal wall. I could see sparks flying from their suits, and I knew they were either incapacitated or worse. My heart was still pounding, my mind racing to catch up with what had just happened. The twins had taken down the hunters with nothing but their minds, their powers, and now they stood in the aftermath, their glowing eyes fixed on the fallen bodies. I couldn't believe what I had just witnessed. These twins weren't just exiles. They were something far more dangerous and far more powerful. The silence that followed was deafening. I stayed where I was, crouched behind the crate, unable to move. My mind was a whirlwind of confusion and fear. What had I gotten myself into? The first twin turned to me, her expression softening as she approached. "You are safe now," she said gently, her voice still carrying that melodic tone. Safe? I wasn't sure about that. I had just watched these two beings I had never met before tonight, take down 3 heavily armed hunters with powers I didn't even know existed. The entire situation was beyond anything I had ever experienced, and my mind struggled to process it all. Who are you really?" I asked, my voice shaking slightly. The twins exchanged a glance before the second one spoke. "We are more than just exiles," she said softly. "We are the last of our kind, the last with these abilities." I stared at them, my confusion only deepening. "Why are they after you?" "Because we are a threat to them," the first twin explained. "Our powers, our abilities are seen as dangerous. If they control us, they control everything." I tried to make sense of what she was saying. "But why are you here? On this ship? How did you even get aboard?" "We have been on the run for a long time," the second twin said, "hiding in the shadows, moving from place to place. Your ship was an opportunity, a chance to escape." "Escape to where?" I asked, still trying to wrap my mind around everything. The twins looked at each other, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of uncertainty in their eyes. "We don't know," the first one admitted, "but we cannot stay here. The hunters will not stop. More will come." I swallowed hard, my mouth suddenly dry. "What do we do now?" The second twin stepped closer, her expression serious. "We need your help." "Help?" I repeated, my heart skipping a beat. "How can I possibly help you? I'm just a researcher. I don't have any special powers, and I definitely can't fight like you can." The first twin smiled softly, her eyes filled with a strange kind of warmth. "You have something far more valuable than powers," she said. "You have knowledge. You know this ship, its systems, its people. With your help, we can find a way off this vessel before it's too late." I stared at her, My mind still reeling. Could I really help them? Did I even have a choice? Before I could answer, the lights flickered again, and a low, ominous hum filled the room. The twins tensed, their glowing eyes scanning the area. More are coming, the second twin whispered. We must move. Chapter 4. The Great Escape. The ominous hum continued to grow louder, vibrating through the walls of the storage bay, shaking the crates and equipment around us. I could feel the tension building in the room, like the air itself was holding its breath. The twins stood tall and calm, but I could see it in their eyes. They knew this wasn't over. The hunters weren't done. More were coming, and they were probably better prepared than the last group. I glanced at the fallen hunters, their armored bodies motionless against the wall. For a moment, I considered taking one of their weapons. Even though I had no idea how to use it, I figured it was better than nothing. But as I reached for one of the guns, the first twin shook her head. No, she said firmly. Their weapons won't work for you. They're keyed to their DNA signatures. Of course, I thought bitterly. Nothing was ever that easy. Then what do we do? I asked, my voice rising with the panic that was bubbling inside me. We can't just wait here for more of them to show up. The second twin turned to me, her expression serious. We need to get to the ship's core. If we can reach the control systems, we can override the scanners and disable the ship's tracking protocols. I blinked, trying to process what she was saying. Disable the scanners? That would hide you from the hunters, right? But what about the rest of the crew? If we mess with the ship's systems, everyone will know something's wrong. The first twin stepped closer, her glowing blue eyes locking with mine. We don't have much time. If we don't stop the hunters from tracking us, they'll find us no matter where we go. The ship scanners are linked to their tracking systems. If we disrupt the link, we can buy ourselves time to escape. Escape to where? I asked, frustration and fear rising in equal measure. We're in the middle of deep space, with nowhere to go. We don't need to escape the ship, the second twin said. We need to escape them. Once the hunters lose their ability to track us, we can figure out our next move. But first, we need to disable the scanners. I ran a hand through my hair, my mind racing. This was way beyond anything I had signed up for. I was a researcher, not a hero. I didn't have powers, and I wasn't trained for combat. But as I looked at the twins, their eyes filled with a strange mix of determination and vulnerability, I realized I couldn't just walk away. They needed me. And somehow, I had gotten myself tangled in this mess. All right, I said, exhaling slowly. The ship's core is on the lower deck. It's heavily secured, and the only way to access it is through the engineering section. We'll need to be careful. If the crew sees us, they'll raise an alarm. The first twin nodded. We will follow your lead. I swallowed hard, trying to push down the fear gnawing at my insides. Let's move. We slipped out of the storage bay, moving silently through the dimly lit corridors of the Odyssey. The ship was eerily quiet, and for a moment, I wondered if the crew was already aware of what was happening. Maybe they were preparing for something, waiting for the hunters to show up and cause chaos. Or maybe they were just oblivious, going about their duties while this deadly game of cat and mouse played out beneath their feet. As we moved through the hallways, the twins kept close, their movements fluid and silent. They seemed to blend into the shadows, their silver skin and glowing eyes almost camouflaged by the low lighting. I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of awe as I watched them. They were so otherworldly, so different from anything I had ever encountered before. And yet, in this moment, we were working together, united by a common goal. We reached the entrance to the engineering section without encountering any crew members, which was a relief. The door to the lower deck was sealed, but I knew the override codes. I quickly input the sequence, and the door slid open with a soft hiss. We stepped inside, the hum of the ship's core growing louder as we descended into the heart of the Odyssey. The lower deck was a labyrinth of machinery and control systems, all of it designed to keep the ship running smoothly during long voyages through space. The air was warmer here, the temperature regulated to prevent the systems from overheating. As we moved deeper into the maze of equipment, I could feel the tension building. We were getting close. There, I whispered, pointing to the central control panel that sat in the middle of the room. That's where we need to go. The twins nodded, and we moved quickly toward the panel. I accessed the terminal, my fingers flying across the keys as I brought up the ship's scanner protocols. My heart raced as I worked, knowing that at any moment, the hunters could find us. Every second felt like an eternity, and I could feel the weight of the twins' gaze on me as I navigated through the system. Almost there, I muttered under my breath, my hands shaking slightly as I entered the final command. The scanner protocols blinked on the screen, and I quickly disabled the ship's tracking systems. There, I said, exhaling in relief. The scanners are down. The hunters won't be able to track you anymore. The twins shared a look, their expressions softening for the first time since this ordeal had begun. Thank you, the first twin said, her voice filled with genuine gratitude. I nodded, still trying to catch my breath. What now? The second twin glanced around the room, her eyes narrowing. We need to leave before the crew notices what we've done. If they detect the system failure, they'll come down here to investigate. I frowned, feeling the weight of what I had just done. The ship scanners were essential to our mission. Disabling them wasn't just going to affect the hunters, it was going to throw off our entire operation. But I didn't have time to dwell on that now. We should head to the escape pods, I suggested. If the hunters can't track you anymore, we can get you off the ship safely. The twins nodded in agreement, and we quickly made our way out of the engineering section. The corridors felt even more tense now, like the ship itself was holding its breath. Every step we took felt heavier, the silence oppressive. Just as we were nearing the escape pods, a loud alarm blared through the ship, red lights flashing as the security system activated. Warning! A mechanical voice echoed through the halls. Unauthorized system breach detected. All personnel to emergency stations. My heart dropped. They had found out. We need to move now, I shouted, my voice barely audible over the blaring alarms. The twins didn't hesitate. We sprinted down the corridor, the flashing red lights casting long, eerie shadows across the walls. I could hear the sounds of the crew scrambling to their stations, the ship's systems coming to life as they responded to the breach. We were running out of time. Finally, we reached the escape pods. I quickly accessed the terminal, unlocking one of the pods and motioning for the twins to get inside. This is it, I said, my voice breathless. Once you're in the pod, you'll be on your own. I don't know where you'll go, but you'll be safe from the hunters. The twins hesitated for a moment, their glowing eyes locking with mine. Then, the first twin stepped forward, placing her hand on my arm. Thank you, she said softly. We won't forget this. The second twin nodded in agreement, her voice filled with a quiet strength. You have given us a chance. We will survive because of you. I swallowed hard, feeling a strange sense of finality wash over me. Go, before it's too late. With one last glance, the twins climbed into the escape pod, the door hissing shut behind them. I watched as the pod launched into the void of space, disappearing into the endless darkness. As the alarms continued to blare around me, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief that they were safe, fear of what would come next, and a deep sense of uncertainty about what the future held. The twins were gone, but the hunters were still out there, and I had just become a part of something far bigger than myself.